What's your favorite horror franchise? This is Matt with State of Flux, here to talk about Scream 6. This time, the franchise is really doubling down on itself and having a conversation about horror franchises, which sounds similar to the same dissection that Scream 2 made. However, there is a distinction that's made between the two. But that's not the only thing that's being tackled this time around. What else is being tackled is our cultural obsession with true crime documentaries and conspiracy theories therein. And that's where the most compelling aspects of this film really come to fruition. That said, Scream 6 isn't a movie that always works for me. In fact, I would argue that this is my least favorite of the Scream franchise. However, I will also say that I don't think it's a bad movie. I would give it 3 stars, spoiler alert. It is a good movie. It's just falling to some of the lesser aspects of this franchise, and the meta nature of it kind of takes a back seat through large chunks, so that the one thing that the Scream franchise has always been able to lean back on for any criticisms is it's a movie that knows that there are criticisms to be made and acknowledges them, and therefore it makes it kind of critic-proof. The fact that this one takes a back seat to that for such large chunks of the storytelling, it can't really get by on that anymore. And some of the staleness of the franchise is really kind of rearing its head, which pains me to say, as this is my all-time favorite film franchise, period. What I mean by that is this film has like a clear divide, and the clear divide is this. It wants to be a movie that really continues on the story of the core four, as the characters call themselves, Sam, Mindy, Chad, and Tara, who were the surviving characters from the 5th movie, and telling their story free from the grasp of the prior films. But the film also is trying to continue on with the whole legacy sequel thing and kind of shoehorns, rather poorly at times, other characters from the past. You get Kirby Reed again for the first real time since the 4th one. She had minor mention or cameo in the 5th one if you knew exactly where to look at the screen at the right exact time. Then there was also the Gale Weathers of it all. And anytime Gale is on screen, the movie just sort of sings. Gale is such a compelling character. You love her. You've grown to love her over now 6 features. But she really feels shoehorned into this. She doesn't feel like an organic presence into the film. And it sort of stops you and makes you wonder why she's even there. She has probably one of the best set pieces of the entire movie, and that's probably the justification for it. That said, it felt really unnecessary. Then you have the commentary that it's trying to make seems very surface level, to the point where the screenwriters, I believe James Vanderbilt is the primary credited screenwriter, just doesn't have that same flair that Kevin Williamson did with Scream, Scream 2, or Scream 4, where if you really knew how to dig deep and dive deep into what makes a horror film a sequel or a remake, which is what those movies were really kind of dissecting and stripping down to their base, most meta-level core. This feels a lot more similar to Aaron Kruger's screenplay for Scream 3, where it's like, yeah, it's tackling trilogies and the tropes therein, but it's just kind of acknowledging the tropes rather than dissecting them or utilizing them in any meaningful way throughout the rest of the core of the central focus of the film. I also think that the killer reveal in this seems pretty obvious, to the point where I called it from the first trailer, not the first trailer, the second trailer, the full trailer. So that was I guess disappointing. It was disappointing in that, like, I called it because of, not from any context clues, but just from a base level of logic going into it, and the scenario that they've developed. I don't want to get into the, like, spoilers of it all, because that's where this really is, makes this franchise what it is the mystery. But I think the mystery is the blandest element of this film. What you have is a compelling opening scene. The opening scene and the scene that follows is just kind of like jaw-dropping. And I made a video about a year ago of, like, if I were to helm Scream 6, this is what I would do. And I totally thought that was the concept that they were going with, based on that opening scene and the whole idea of, like, a shrine of Ghostface. But those story elements are pretty much abandoned to the point where it's like, why did you abandon clearly the most interesting aspect of the film to give us a relative dud of a final act? But that said, the positives are the core four are really interesting and compelling characters in their own right. There isn't unlike something like The Force Awakens, where Rey, Poe, and Finn had a very clear, like, Rey is clearly Luke, just with a gender swap. Finn is clearly Han Solo, just with a racial swap, and Poe is clearly Leia with a gender swap. That you don't have that with these characters. Sam is the Sydney character, but she is nothing like Sydney. The same thing with Tara, is like no aspect of Sydney. The two Meeks twins aren't anything like Dewey or Gale or Randy. I guess Mindy's a little like Randy, just as Kirby was a little bit like Randy, and that's a highlight, is when Mindy and Kirby meet and start sharing movie trivia. That was pretty cool. That said, the thing that this has going for it is those characters are interesting and compelling, and I want to see more of them. And so if there were to be any further sequels, and if any of those characters should survive this movie, and I'm not saying if any of them do, that is the aspect of the film I would like to see pursued across further sequels. And let the classic characters kind of fade into non-relevancy, because they clearly aren't relevant to these movies anymore. We're establishing something new and making commentary on new horror tropes. This franchise is a franchise that could, in theory, never truly die, because horror movies are going to be continually made from now until the end of time, and Scream is the one franchise that can comment on them. And that is kind of lost with this film, largely. And that's kind of a disappointment. So there you have it. That's my Scream 6 sort of rant. This movie is very violent, probably more so than any of the other ones. I guess the violence is similar to the violence in the first Scream or last year's Scream 2022. That said, there's just a lot more of it, and it kind of becomes crass at times, and it just doesn't feel very screamy. And that could be a selling point to you. If you want a little less Scream, if you want this franchise to change and to grow, maybe that's a good thing. But also it's kind of a burden, because you also have to acknowledge certain elements that make it Scream, and having its foot in both worlds just doesn't really work. That said, there is a really great, in I guess the second scene, a great acknowledgement of Friday the 13th 8 Jason Takes Manhattan that is not really on the nose, but it's also kind of really on the nose, and I appreciated that, just with simple naming of characters. And then there's a really, like, super hidden reference to Wes Craven's second movie. His second credited feature film on IMDb is a movie called The Fireworks Woman, which was a hardcore porn film directed under the name Abe Snake. And one of the set pieces of this film is built around a convenience store called Abe Snake. and that made me kind of like squee with joy in the little reference that I got. Also, the subway scene, which you've seen to death in all the trailers, is really cool. Like, Where's Waldoing all the different horror icons from Samara Weaving's character from Ready or Not being there to, like, obviously Freddy and Jason and Pinhead and any number of other ones, the Babadook. It's really cool seeing all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't know that there's much else to explore with this one. I do want to get into the more spoilers of the film, but I might do that at a later point. So if you want a spoiler review, you'll probably have that coming to you on Monday or Tuesday. But thanks for watching, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Peace.